Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. I have back on the show Angel Law. She was back on the last time, September 16th, 2022, season 3, episode 107. And joining us today is Alex Baker, JD. And we're going to have ourselves a conversation about everything court, from psychological abuse to these therapists that are out of control, as well as these ROs based on litigation and your conduct in court. Welcome to the show. How are you both?
I'm doing great, Marianne. Thanks for having me on.
Same here.
Thank you so much. So people coming into family court have no idea what to expect. They have no clue what they're walking into, because I know I didn't.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the most painful situations, is you think that, you know, you're going to be wrapping something up. Most people have a tendency to wait to separate from a partner until the situation's untenable. And if you thought that that period of stress was intense, just wait until the court gets their hands on you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had that experience. I mean, when I first started my family law case, like 8+ years ago, I was in the middle of law school and being trained. Well, this is what procedure is, and this is how our fair and just system operates. And, you know, all the judge is only there to make sure everybody gets a fair trial and all that. And then, bam, the very first hearing in my family law case was for sole control of the family house plus sole custody of our minor child. And it was a complete ambush hearing where I knew that there was a declaration, a therapist declaration, because the top paper said that. But when I looked through my papers that I had been served, that declaration had been torn out of there. And when I finally got up to the hearing, I said, Your Honor, this declaration, I don't have a declaration. I don't know who it's by or what it says or anything. And the judge was like, well, there's a proof of service on file. You know, so look, she said to me, I have to have another hearing where I have to shut down the courtroom, so you have 30 seconds to argue your case. That's literally what she said. 30 seconds to argue a case that I don't even know what it's about, because the declaration had been stealthily removed, right? So yeah, bam, gave the house and the kid to my ex, a 130-second hearing. Welcome to family court. Mm-hmm. It was only months later that I found out what was in this declaration by this assassin therapist. And that was only after I got sent into like co-parenting sessions with this therapist. I didn't even know that the co-parenting therapist was the one who had filed this declaration. Only later did I finally get the declaration and find out that here's maybe all you need to know about where this declaration was going. There's a line in there where this therapist, whose name is Lori Brooks Jefferson, out in Los Angeles, and she said, while I have never met the father, it was related to me that. And then she goes on to say that I'm a drug addict, I'm an unsafe driver, children are afraid to be alone with me, that I'm a child abuser, an emotional child abuser, and just all of this stuff that I never, ever in the entire case, never got a chance to question her, to refute any of this stuff. It was just a fait accompli. So yeah, welcome to family court hell.
How sad. This is what they're doing to people. I would walk into court and the opposing attorney would automatically hand me papers of old case law. Like, what? I'm going to read this now. I would just toss it on the table and just continue. And
right.
he would win anyway, because I think everyone knows my story that my ex, his wife works in the courthouse. So they had connections because the judge and the opposing attorney were BFFs, because they worked in the DA's department. So that's how things play out. And people don't realize that there's all these connections in these courtrooms. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the hoax is that the judge is neutral. And if you really think about it and really sort of zoom out and look at the picture and look at the big picture, the government cannot be neutral. Okay, they are a player. They have skin in the game. I sort of analogize it to professional sports, right? So if you think about like the NFL, the commissioners and the owners in the NFL, they actually don't care who wins the game down on the field. They make their money just by the existence of the game. They're putting on the game itself, right? And it's the same thing with this court system. They're putting on a game where supposedly it's a fight, right? It's just like boxing or professional wrestling or whatever. They're putting on a fight, and they don't care so much who wins, at least not in the average case. And we'll talk about when cases get corrupted and they actually do care who wins. But at a first stab at it, they don't care. They just want the game to go on. So they're biased against settlement. They're biased against resolving this. They just want to maximize conflict. So typically they'll let this person sort of win kind of an issue, but it's modifiable, however, right? So they just keep you coming back and keep you coming back, and they just keep going, right? They don't want the season to end, right? This is their league that they're putting on, right? And it's the judges and the lawyers and all the other hangers-on of the whole divorce court industry, the therapists and the GALs and the evaluators and the whatever, and the damn court reporters. I mean, it's all of them, right? And they just want to keep you in.
And let's also examine that in low-income areas, they're not going to let the case go wild. When you submit your income and expense forms and you're telling the court what you have, they're going to figure out what this is going to cost you, right? You know, attorney and a guy who's considering divorce or at a dinner party. And I think this is like a well-known joke. And the guy says to the divorce attorney, hey, I'm thinking about getting divorced. How much is this going to cost me? And the divorce attorney responds, well, tell me how much money you have.
Yeah, how much you got? Yeah.
How much you got? That's what it'll cost you. But, even, right, so what do we do? One thing that no one told me, I knew about, was at a minimum, divide as many of the basic assets by a stipulation as possible. Take a bank account, if you can at all. Divide it in half and say, we stipulate to divide the balance. Next piece of the pie, we stipulate each party gets this car, because otherwise the judicial decision on it and the attorneys to divide the two cars, which could be divisible by driving opposite directions, they'll bill you $10,000 for a car that might be worth about that amount. So
right.
Like even the smallest shit, like he gets the surfboards, I get the bikes. No fucking attorney needs to help me with it. Next, keep moving on.
Yeah, but the problem, Angel, is that you're sane and reasonable, and when both parties are sane and reasonable, you're not in family court. You're not in any kind of court, not for very long, because when both sides are sane and reasonable, you figure out pretty quickly that the whole thing is a racket. And it is. In my expert opinion, the court system is an extortion racket. It was set up that way to be that way. And so that unfortunately, it only takes one, at least one, to be insane or unreasonable and thinking that they can win, whatever that might actually mean, to just perpetuate things into the indefinite future. And I know, you know, you're in your 9th year, I'm in my 9th year, and it's just crazy to think that we can't figure out how to split this up and make a parenting plan. It should take maybe a month. In a typical case, you can get this done. You can figure a case out. And I mean, you know, this is what we do in law school. They'll give us, you know, property division problems, and they'll give you a set of facts, and you've got 1 hour to write to write your answer, and you can do it as a law student, right? So the idea that we've got to litigate for a decade, that's just no. It's just job security for these creeps.
And truly, that's where it came from. I came from finance. And so it was in my 2nd year. I think that was right around the time that I had gotten engaged, and then a rock was thrown through the French doors of my bedroom, that it gave me a hint that this wasn't going to go well. My father made a phone call to me, and he said, I know he's going to kill you, so why don't you think about the size of a check you need, and I'll send it to him. And so what I did was I had my attorney draft up, after a $90,000 bill for 1 month, because that attorney had gotten his hands on my father's assets, where my father was saying, he said, you know, open up the war chest and get rid of this guy because he's going to kill you otherwise. And so after a $90,000 month, which wasn't all my money, because a lot of it was my father's, I still felt very conflicted because I was losing my relationship with my father, with somebody that was just a nightmare. In any case, it was like my 2nd year of the divorce. I wrote up, now this is important for everyone, right? Because I just said, you know, try to settle everything. I did. And I gave up all of like my assets, even the ones that were stolen. I took on all of the community debts. And the only thing I wanted to stay in was my house that had some modest equity at the time. And I thought I would be done. And I also stipulated to joint legal, joint physical. And my attorney said, if you don't give him everything and give him half of the kids, he's never going to leave you alone, and you'll be my client for life. And I thought, boy, I don't really like my attorney, so I'll do what he says. I did it. And I'm 6 years later after that global settlement agreement, and I've never gotten any of the assets from it. And all of the assets that were assigned to him, he took. And then all these assets that were assigned to me, he took. And then he's litigated me for 6 years, and in between stolen my children, sold my divided property house. I mean, it's just been nothing but hell. And at the end of the day, my case, I'll say this, the really bizarre feature of my case, and this is like Marianne, was my opposing counsel had a judge brother. And my judge was also a formerly caught for being part of the ticket fixing scandal. For anyone who doesn't know, the county of Orange got busted for RICO, for racketeering. Low-level clerks and, you know, peasants like us went to federal prison, and the judges got publicly censured. So looking at that, I had a criminal presiding over my matter. My ex-husband was a criminal, not by my estimations, but by the estimation of a federal court indictment for 587 felony counts for drug trafficking, firearm possession, money laundering, and being part of a criminal syndicate. So, and I was like extra boring, and I used to be nice. It's hard to sometimes believe, but once upon a time I was like Bo Peep. And so with that being said, the reason I'm saying it is it doesn't mean that you're going to wind up in my position, but faith in the legal system should never be given over, no matter what the situation is. I do think that you would have a better outcome if you went to Vegas with your opposing party and one went on black and one went on red at the roulette table, and one of you walked out, everybody would still be way better off.
It's like that, and you know, the judges are like pit bosses, right? And they just want to keep you coming back, like double your bet, keep you coming back, modify that custody, whatever it is. I think one of the points that you raise is that maybe you don't know your soon-to-be ex as well as you thought, and I think you figured out at a certain point that your ex really had connections to organized crime. I come from the music business, writing and producing music successfully for a long time. My now ex-wife was my business partner in all of that, and it turns out that that even if you, like I did, discover a whole stack of forged music contracts that purport to basically rip you off for a whole lot of money, and you've got all of this evidence, one does not sue a major corporation. I mean, just don't even think about it. It is bad form, and it's just not to be done, and you will be punished for trying to get justice against the truly powerful people, because they have connections into the court system that you simply don't have. And if you don't think that these cases are fixable and riggable, you just don't know. I'm just tell you right now, I was not taught this in law school, but what I've learned in the real world and working on a lot of cases is that when any kind of case, a civil lawsuit or a family law case or anything else, when it starts up, here's what happens behind the scenes typically, is that the lawyers for both sides come together and they figure out the case. Now, what do they figure out? Well, it's basically a 3-step process, okay? Step 1, they ask, how much is this case worth in terms of money? And then step 2, where exactly is the money? And step 3, how do we, the lawyers for both sides, get the money? And that's what it is. And then, of course, tragically, in family court, we're talking about kids often. Mm-hmm. And the kids they're not human beings. No, they are just assets to be leveraged. And they'll figure out which, and typically it's just about maintaining the fight as long as possible, because every time you want to try to go and get the judge to do the right thing or to do anything remotely reasonable, you gotta pay. You can pay and pay again. And even if you're going pro se, well, of course they hate you because you're not giving your life savings to a lawyer. But they'll still, now, of course, now you need a 730 custody evaluation, right? Or you need something else, and we're going to fight about who pays for that, but you're going to pay for that. And one way or another, you pay and you pay, and you basically pay to escape, and that's it. It's just, go ahead.
Also point out is, you can have two, because I've helped these type of cases before, you can have two perfectly reasonable people, and if one of them gets a horrific attorney, the merry-go-round can be set into motion, and even against the desires of the clients, the animosity can begin. And then people who, said, oh, well, I we were married 30 or 40 years and we just want to go our own way. But what Alex said, where the attorneys are like, whoa, if they just divide this 50-50, we're getting nothing. We've got to blow this up. We've got to make them fight. We've got to tell them they need a forensic. We've got to, tell them that they need more hearings. And eventually, two people that could have settled over coffee are losing their estate, and then they become angry towards each other, and then the merry-go-round can spin faster. And so just know that if it's not just do I have a crazy ex? You can have a bad judge, a bad opposing counsel, or your own attorney can be against your own interests. You have at a minimum 5 players per court, and you only need one. You only need one bad person. And I assure you, between a judge and 2 attorneys, you de facto have at least one bad actor in every case.
To that point, let me tell you a couple of the most interesting things that I learned in law school. One of them is that a lawyer does not owe his or her highest duty to the client. A lawyer owes their highest duty to the court. And well, what does that mean? Well, what that means really is that the Bar Association might as well be called the lawyer club. And the lawyers are in the club, and the judge is a lawyer, and they're in the club. And so these people, the lawyers and the judge, and they are people. That's important to remember. They're not the court. These are human beings who have interests, and they have mortgages to pay, and their kids need to go, all of that, right? Just like you are, just like we all are. And they owe their highest duty to each other, not to you. Okay, and you have to get your head around that before you realize the implications of that. But it's about them. The second thing that I learned in law school, one of the mantras that my professors beat into our heads was argue both sides. Argue both sides. So like in law school, you're given these fact patterns, and you're supposed to spot the legal issues, and then you write a legal argument about this case. And they always tell you argue both sides, and then you come to a conclusion of who wins or who loses. But in law school, there's no right answers. They don't care who wins and who loses. Then they don't grade you. One person could write an answer where the defendant wins, and another one can write an answer where the plaintiff wins, and they both could get a really great score. Okay, that's not the point. It's argue both sides. They just want to see, can you build an argument? Well, stop and think about what this means in the real world. What it actually means is there is no law and you have no rights. Okay, you can take any fact pattern and you can make a plausible sounding argument for either side. And that's what happens. The 2 attorneys of the 2 sides, they bring their plausible arguments, and the judge just picks winners and losers based on whatever, based on what the judge had for breakfast this morning, or more realistically, based on who bought the judge breakfast this morning, right? In a legal system that I would be in favor of, that would make sense to me, there would be a set of laws that was a set of principles, and you could plug the facts into the law, and you could get a right answer. You could tell who's liable and who's not liable, or who's guilty and who's innocent. But that is absolutely not the way it works in the real world, and that's not the way it's taught in law school. No, argue both sides, they say. So it took me a while to really get the implications of what that means in the real world, and to actually see it in action. And there is no law and you have no rights.
Right, because we also have things like AI, and there's something called Watson, which what was it, developed out of MIT? And Watson is shockingly more capable of correctly diagnosing a live patient than a physician, which was surprising to me as a person, because I'm thinking, wow, a trained physician, they have this ability to see past what a patient is saying and say, well, you might feel lethargic, but I can see the blue under your eyes, so that's really anemia. And they can kind of visually inspect. But in any case, Watts is also capable of using law books, just like medical books. Watson can interpret the law. Watson has like a 95% grade with human beings with medical conditions, far more complex than black letter law, because you can put in, data marriage, assets, all of these conditions. In any case, they already have the ability to rule using Watson. If they wanted this to work, it would. They don't. We have wonderful diagnostic machines for our cars.
And see the thing is that judges were never supposed to decide cases. Okay, juries were supposed to decide cases. So in any kind of case, you have the facts and you have the law. Both things can be disputed, right? But it's supposed to be, the judge is supposed to be the trier of the law, and a jury is supposed to be the trier of the facts. But really, in a more sane system, there would not be disputes about the law, because the law would be simple and clear, and we wouldn't dispute what the law even is. Okay, instead we don't have principles of law whatsoever. We have rules. We have rules of court, and we have rules of evidence, and we have statutes in the family code and the civil code, and we have rules of civil procedure and rules of criminal procedure, and then we have case law, thousands and hundreds of thousands of cases that all, and that's the law too, right? And all of it's contradictory, and nobody knows what. And then you have this concept of discretion, right? Where they've written into the law that this is an area where the judge has discretion. Well, that's just legalese for the judge gets to make shit up. That's what it literally means. And I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not even being flippant. There actually is no law. The law is literally whatever the judge says that the law is, no matter what is written down in all of those statutes. So yeah, with a clear and simple legal system, I would totally trust AI or Watson to explain what the law is, right? But you still have factual disputes, right? So then, that's going to be based on testimony and who's more credible and all of that. And again, those sorts of determinations were never, under the legal system that we supposedly inherited from medieval England, that was never supposed to be the job of the judge. The whole idea was, no, we don't trust the government to make factual determinations and to decide cases, because it leads to tyranny. And that's why in the Constitution, supposedly, they put the 6th and the 7th Amendment, which supposedly guarantees us the right to a jury trial in a civil matter and in a criminal matter. But guess what? It's a lie. I mean, it's just a lie. You can't have a family court system or child welfare or probate court or vaccine court or any of these other court systems that they've made up in the last bunch of decades that don't have a jury. I mean, they just made this stuff up, and none of it is okay as far as I'm concerned. And the results are all around. You've got like Marianne's case and Angel Law's case and my case and a whole lot of other cases where families are destroyed and life savings are wiped out. And I guess that's why I conclude, when people ask me, they say, how are we going to fix this? How can we repair the family court system? And I've come to give what a lot of people think is a depressing answer. And I don't think that the family court system is going to be fixed, because it's not broken. It's working perfectly well by and for the people who set it up. And when you understand the problem that way, it might be more depressing, but if any problem is going to get solved from our viewpoint, it's going to start by understanding what the problem really is in the first place. And these people have a racket. There's tons and tons of money, not only the money that they extort out of you, the client and the parties in the case, but there's also all kinds of federal money that comes into all these county, the CPS workers. And there's all sorts of situations where these county agencies are eligible for federal money or other government money. And it's just a gravy train. I mean, there are people absolutely getting rich. I know minors councils that make $1 million a year in Los Angeles County. and by just telling lies. I mean, I'm involved in a federal civil rights case right now where there was a guardianship hearing, a secret, unnoticed guardianship hearing where they took a child away from a legally married biological parents, and it all happened 5 days after the father was officially cleared of the one vague allegation that had been brought against him. And this minors counsel comes into court, conceals the whole fact that DCFS had cleared the father 5 days before, lies and says that they tried to serve the parents and that they were on the lam. And none of this was true. None of it was true whatsoever. This minors counsel's name, by the way, is William Spiller Jr. out in Los Angeles. So yeah, the case is called the Augustus case. So we do have a federal civil rights case pending, but the mere fact that they went and litigated for 2.5 years in this nonsense guardianship hearing, just so that William Spiller could make his money and all this could go on, it's just absolutely unbelievable, the stuff that goes on.
And that name he's a frequent flyer, so we already know that you are in the human sausage factory when you have Spiller or Cynthia Glasser, or there are certain judges where it's Alex's title. It's railroading, stonewalling, and gaslighting, because it is a fixed outcome. And I think that's another really interesting point, is amongst us three, we have this like really similar fact pattern where the number of kids we have, our genders are reversed, but it was a procedure manual to extract assets, and that it didn't really matter who we were, about our kids, individual situation where we think, oh, we've got this snowflake situation. And if the court only knew, but it's this predetermined outcome. One of the things that broke my case was, I also did a really good job recording people, because I would have been gaslit even into questioning whether things that were as bad as they were really happened. And I had learned that my failure to document certain things meant that I was not credible. And it's like, I would have needed a GoPro, to document like these bad things were happening and I was being abused and the police got called, but they're like, police report, shmalice report. They're like, what the hell you want us to do with this in family court? It just so happens to be from a law enforcement agency. We can't possibly use it here. You don't have a GoPro helmet video. It didn't happen. And as you begin to, like, as Alex, explained, be gaslit, you even start to doubt yourself. And it really starts to mess with your mind, because you're like, well, maybe that wasn't such a big deal. And maybe it is my fault for not getting out sooner. And yeah, why did I have 3 children with a person I couldn't stand? That really doesn't seem to make sense. Clearly that's my fault too. And then when you, one of the other things I started doing was I started showing up to other hearings, and I would see the same acting where they pretended like, what are we going to do here? I don't know, attorney. What should we do? Should we get a 7:30 evaluator? Oh, yes, get out the list. And then I was like, oh my God, that's what they did to me. And they made it, it was quite, theatrical. They make you feel like they're helping you, like, oh, well, let's see who could assist us with a complete and thorough investigation. Oh, yes. I heard that she has some availability. Yeah, because, I won't be as, I was going to say something colorful, but they probably had an interaction with that person maybe the night before, that there was some sort of either pillow talk or cocktails and quid pro quo at a minimum relationship. And what I mean by that is there are judges who want certain quote unquote experts so that they can get an outcome. And then that expert knows the outcome the judge wants, and then is guaranteed more and more and more business. That's absolutely racketeering. We can't get the DOJ to do anything about it right now, but there's absolutely an entire criminal syndicate. And I would allege that 95% of what happens in your so-called family law case happens outside of the court. Going into the hearing is, in my opinion, it's almost purely for show. It's almost purely to teach one party, or to give the appearance of a lawful proceeding. And it's hilarious because you can even look at a transcript and say, oh my gosh, like a few hundred pages were submitted, or we've seen it. Like, I mean, I can personally speak to, I've had a judge say, my clerk didn't understand it and threw up their hands. So that means not only did the judge not read it, but his clerk couldn't understand it, which means misunderstanding was then told to the judge to make a decision from a point of complete misunderstanding. That makes no sense whatsoever, unless it's just about a prefixed outcome. And
I've seen the templates, right? So, and this, I'm actually from Orange County, California, where mistakenly a document got sent to a party in a CPS investigation that was a template. This is from the social workers, and all of the information that they need, the findings they need to make to take the kid away from the parent and put the kid to the foster care system are already filled in there, and there's a bunch of blanks, like where the address and the specific things are all left blank, but there's an actual template. And it's, I'm in possession of this, so if you think there aren't predetermined outcomes, oh yeah, there are, of course there are, and we see it kind of on a regular basis, so it's scary. It's really scary. I think we can all sort of appreciate that there are other people in this world who would do us harm, even if it's the person that we used to share a bed with. Mm-hmm. We can sort of understand that. I mean, we know, sometimes there can be, just angst and anger and all these things at the end of a relationship. So that, I can accept that. But the idea that the system that we thought was supposed to be here to protect us, that was supposed to be here to protect the children and to operate in the best interest of the children, and that the system itself is not at all what we were told, and that the system is out to completely do us harm, to exploit us, to destroy families and take all the money, that is really, really difficult to get up from, and so that's why I've kind of decided to dedicate a good part of the rest of my time here on this planet to trying to help people in whatever ways I can. That's why I started the Postmodern Justice Media Project, which is at pmjmp.org. I think you can probably scan that QR thing that's up over my shoulder there and go to my site. I'm back to fairly regular blogging. I am working on my book, Railroading, Stonewalling, and Gaslighting, which is a bunch of stories from my own cases and the hideous that they are, and other people's cases as well that I've worked in, and the whole thing just really adds up to a giant extortion racket. But I'm always looking for people's input on what can we do, and I think maybe the single greatest thing or best thing that we could agitate for in trying to rein in this corruption would be cameras in the courtrooms. I think that a court proceeding is supposed to be public. By definition, it's supposed to be public, and we have the technology to live stream and record, just like we're doing right now. Okay, every court easily and inexpensively has the ability to allow the public to witness what's going on in a court proceeding, and they don't do it. And the reason that they don't automatically allow cameras in the courtrooms, just as a matter of practice, is because they want to control the evidence. The evidence of what? The evidence of their own wrongdoing. That's it. They want to conceal the fact that they're running an extortion racket, and that's what this whole thing is about. And you know, a lot of people still don't believe it, you know, when crazy conspiracy theorists like Alex Baker come along and try to say these kinds of things. Oh, you know, you got screwed over in your divorce, you know, but that doesn't mean the whole system. And isn't well, okay, you know, but I think millions and millions of people now are waking up one by one because they've had it happen to them. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully we can figure out a way that it doesn't have to keep happening to everybody, to where the people even that haven't had it happen to them, they can start actually getting it, and to understand why they should care, you know, why they should care. And there's a country, there's a society, there's a whole social fabric that is being dismantled and destroyed, and it touches everybody and everything. So it is important. And
hey, Alex, what do you think, you know, if they just got rid of family court, took it down to civil court with the videos, having it videoed with tamper-proof mics?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Look, whether you call it civil or family, you know, whatever name that you put on it isn't so much important. I mean, I think people want a dispute resolution forum that is fair. I think that the law itself needs to be greatly simplified. There's no reason for all of these mountains of procedure, this and all of that. It's all bullshit. Okay, we don't need that. So I believe that a typical family law case can be both civil and criminal. Right? A civil case is where you're fighting about money and property. A criminal is where your liberty is at stake, right? And your fundamental rights, like who's going to parent the children. If they take your child away from you, that's a criminal outcome. And if you still want to believe that the Constitution has any sort of protection for us, you've got to say that we have the right to a jury trial. And so, yeah, if they could somehow get a jury trial in family law matters, and cameras in the courtroom, yeah, I think it would go a long way towards solving this.
Or even if parents just went pro se and just did not hire a family law attorney, that would put everybody out of business.
It would put them out of business, which is really why they hate you if you try to go pro se. And they hate it. When I first started this, I was in law school, and then in the middle of it, I graduated law school, got my JD. I thought that I would perhaps become an attorney as a sort of a second career. But it turns out they're not going to let me in the club, and they will screw you over if you're pro se. And you really don't want to get into a situation where you're unrepresented and the other side has like an army of expensive attorneys. It's just they will screw you, even if you know the law, right? So, and I'm here to tell you, I know the law. To the extent that law exists, I know it. And I not only have a formal education, and I know what I'm talking about, I also have a tremendous amount of experience in both family law and civil litigation, in state court and in federal court, at the trial court level and the appellate level, and all of that. I know what I'm doing, and I'm telling you that no part of what's on in my cases is right or fair or legal or just or anything like that. And so for all the people out there who might be listening, who they feel, they don't have the education that, or the experience that I have, and they tried to go pro se because they couldn't afford an attorney, right? Shocker, right? And then they were made to feel that it was their fault because they didn't follow the procedure, or they didn't do that, or if you'd have just followed this form or just done that or whatever. It's gaslighting, man. It's not your fault. You're not crazy. You didn't do anything wrong. They basically know. Okay. So I mean, one of the most important words you learn in law school is jurisdiction. Okay, and the court exerts its jurisdiction. Well, what does that mean? Jurisdiction means that the court seizes and holds what's most important to you. That is your kids, your money, your house, your ability to make a living, or your career. Okay, they hold these things, and then they say, fight, go ahead. We're holding them. You come and fight. That's literally what jurisdiction. I mean, they have personal jurisdiction and subject matter jurisdiction and in rem property jurisdiction, but it all just means we're holding it, and we're going to charge you to get some part of it back. All right, it's just extortion. It's truly just extortion.
Well, that's why I went pro se, because I had racked up close to, we'll say, around 45,000 in charge cards, just like swiping and swiping.
Yeah.
And I feel sorry for these parents. I mean, I can handle a lot of verbal abuse, being in a marriage for 10 years, for being verbally abusive. So that was fine. So when I got in there and the opposing attorney was nasty, I was on the witness stand, and this is an uplifting story here for this podcast. I totally gaslit him, but I was on the witness stand. I was on the witness stand, and he said, and he was very dramatic. He'd hold his hands up like, "What are you going to do? Are you going to report me next? You reported my wife how many times?" I said, "I think twice." And he said, "Well, how many times did you report me?" I said, "I think we're on the third time." He said, "Well, are you going to do it today?" I said, "Well, we'll see how you do." And he said, "Well, you also reported me to," and I interrupted him. I said, "the Honorable Thomas Wolfe." And he goes like this. He looks up. "Who is this Tom Wolfe?" And the courtroom bust out laughing, because that was our new governor. The new governor just started like 7 months prior to all of this, and the courtroom burst into laughter. Like I couldn't hear anything up there, but the court reporter who's typing away, she's smiling and looking up at me like, "You got him." And he just stomped back to his desk and sat down like a fourth grader, like he was so upset.
Yeah, but and congratulations, yay! Good job nailing them. There are some times when you are able to nail them, but stop and think of what he was doing to you. He was trying to say that you were doing something wrong for reporting people. Wait a minute. Reporting people who do bad things is what we're supposed to do in a civilized society, right? When there are disputes of any kind in this world, which they do happen, there are only two ways that we have to try to resolve that dispute. One is the wrong way, and that's to use violence, like, do it my way or I'm going to hit you on the head. The other is the right way, and that's by accessing the legal system. You file a report, you file a complaint of some kind, you file a lawsuit. That's the right way to resolve a dispute in a civilized society, which is why I am very sad and angry and not uplifting to report to you that I have a now permanent domestic violence restraining order against me because my civil litigation against my ex-wife / ex-business partner was found to constitute domestic violence abuse regardless of whether my lawsuit had merit or not. In fact, what started all this is I won a copyright infringement case against my ex-wife, the first federal case. And then I dared to post the judgment, the federal court judgment, on a blog. And in the middle of this, I had discovered all this other evidence, all these forged music contracts and all this other stuff. And I was threatening to file another bigger lawsuit. And I was blogging about it, which I sort of thought I had the right to do. Mm-hmm. So this is what invited a domestic violence restraining order against me, because my ex-wife said that I was, disparaging her in her business, which I was, right? I guess you could say that. Yeah, I'm accusing you of forgery and copyright infringement and fraud. And yeah, I guess that's disparaging as hell, if you want to put it that way. But
is a factual statement disparagement? Because then
in California, yes. It's domestic violence abuse, because so what the law in California was at the time, it said that one of the definitions of abuse is to disturb the peace of mind of the other person. And then there were a number of cases that tried to answer the question, well, what does that mean exactly? And there was one case called Nadkarni that defined disturbing the peace as any conduct that destroys the mental or emotional calm of the other person. Ultimately, that exact language got adopted into the statute. So that language destroys the mental or emotional calm of the other person is now the law. And as I argued to the Court of Appeal when I ultimately was appealing my restraining order, I said to them, what does that mean? Or better yet, Your Honors, what doesn't it mean? Right? What, destroys the mental or emotional calm could mean anything from like a threat to kill the other person, all the way down to, she's upset because I forgot to take out the garbage, okay? And anything in between. I actually gave 3 examples to the Court of Appeal in my argument. The first example, I said, suppose I'm wearing a T-shirt that has a slogan on it that's really offensive, and my ex gets really upset, okay? It upsets her peace of mind. Is that domestic violence? I said, suppose my ex is using contraception that I say is like immoral, and I'm against it, and it upsets my peace of mind. Is that her domestic violence? Or suppose my ex votes for the wrong political candidate, and it really, I know this one, right? In the 2016 elections, I know of a number of couples where he voted for Trump and she voted for Hillary Clinton, and there was a lot of animosity between the two of them. But is that domestic violence? It certainly will upset your peace of mind. But the reason I chose those 3 examples is because all 3 of those are things that the United States Supreme Court has said are protected activity. You got a right to vote. You've got a right to free speech, even on your T-shirt, and you've got a right to contraception, right? So, yeah, and I said to the Court of Appeal, I said, look, I will stipulate that my litigation against her upsets her peace of mind. No doubt about it. In fact, the restraining order that she brought against me, which is litigation, it's upsetting my peace of mind. I promise you. I'm not happy about it. It's cost me my children. You think that doesn't destroy my mental or emotional calm? I'm here to tell you it does. But does this mean that I can now get another restraining order against her? And then if I do, can she turn around and get another one against me? And then me another one against her, and around and around? This is patently absurd. Well, not only did they reject my argument that it's absurd, but they've now gone even further. They wrote it into the statute, and now coming up this January of 2013, there's another change to the California statutes, which I think ought to be called the Alex Baker Act. It's actually AB 23 something or another, right? But it should be called the Alex Baker Act because they've made a change to the vexatious litigant statute, which is another way that they stonewall you. They've deemed me a vexatious litigant, but they've now expanded the definition of a vexatious litigant, connecting it to the domestic violence restraining order statute that says that if you already have a restraining order in place and then the restrained person files any paper, one paper of any kind that is deemed to be just to delay or frivolous or whatever, then you can get a vexatious litigant pre-filing order that says that from now on, you're not allowed to file anything, including in the family law case or anything else, without the judge's permission. And then this is just absolute, total nonsense, but this is just another way that they stonewall you. And then, of course, they tell you, it's your fault for being such a vexatious litigant, which is, of course, gaslighting. It is. I've learned to laugh, and if there's anything that I can put out there for people to try to help just feel a little bit better about this, it is to try to learn to see the dark humor in it. Now, you've got to develop a kind of a twisted sense of humor, but when you just open your eyes and see what's going on, it's so absurd. You have to laugh, and so it is funny. There are those of us out there who can find a way to laugh about it, and you're not crazy. It's not your fault if you're getting screwed over in court. It's not your fault, and you're not crazy. Okay, so, and this is for me too. I got to keep repeating it to myself so that I don't go crazy.
And I want to say, I've been on a lot of legislative calls with so-called politicians and the domestic violence, or what they call the DVPA in California. And California, we come up with bad ideas and then they spread like a virus to the rest of the country. Mm-hmm. Something I want to say about the domestic violence, restraining order issues here is men and women, you're both screwed. Both sides are really at a bad place right now. And here's why. Women, I'm just going to say it was traditionally more women. Like, that's just math. Women wanted coercive control components, and which means somebody's sort of behavior, the cumulative behavior, could be interpreted as coercive. Let me show you a case that recently bit a mother in the ass where I help her. Her ex-husband was molesting their 3.5 to 4-year-old daughter. The mother called the police. The police came because the mother didn't know what to do. They took and they did an interview with the child, and they said, "Yeah, we have a problem here. Let's get an EPO to protect this child because, unfortunately, we've got sexual abuse going on here." The mother was then charged with domestic violence for making a sexual abuse allegation against the father. It wasn't the mother, it was the police. The police decided to use an EPO. The mother has no ability. She has no ability to get an EPO unless a police officer and a judge are going to sign off on it. She really doesn't have the power. But the EPO was found to be domestic violence, and they took her child away.
Yeah, this is, and they get it wrong both ways, right? I know, Angel, you and I have both seen cases where they give children back to known pedophiles and abusers who are on, who are on the sexual predator lists and all that, and then they will take children away from like a kind and loving father like me, right, who never did anything, remotely wrong to either. I was a kind, loving, involved dad for 17 years to two kids pretty far apart in age. And they just get it wrong on purpose. And yeah, this whole thing of parental alienation is a perfect example of this, how they twist the issue around to serve themselves, right? So there is such a thing as parental alienation for sure. I'm a victim of it. My kids, who I was great to for forever, they won't talk to me because they have been made to choose between whether they love dad or they love mom, and it's unnecessary. But there are also false allegations of parental alienation. That can happen. And so there's actually a big movement on now to try to do away with the concept of parental alienation altogether in the family courts, which that too would be completely wrong, as far as I'm concerned, right? Just because there can be false allegations doesn't mean there can, in another case, be true allegations. It'd be like saying, well, there can be false allegations of rape, which is, there can be. So therefore, we're just going to do away with the concept of sexual assault altogether. Well, no, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. No, but this is just the kind of stuff where they're taking this horrible system and they consistently keep figuring out ways to make it even worse and even worse and even worse. So
yeah, and the more power we give them, the worse it's getting, because I've helped many fathers who were completely falsely accused. Now, I'm talking, a man was in another place, a father was out on a Navy ship. Whatever it was an impossibility that the domestic violence occurred. There is no consequence. I mean, you go and you fabricate and you attempt, and not only do you attempt, what is so disturbing to me is, and it's just more likely, I just see it happen more to men, is they're falsely accused, no law enforcement is involved. And this is probably the bigger problem, is we have laws for true violence. We have laws for custodial interference, and that is real. That the family court, these little shits, came up with alienation when no, there's a criminal code for when you take somebody's children and you won't give them back. It's a criminal statute, and they should be charged with a crime because it is. But that wouldn't make money for the family court. So they come up with these hocus pocus names that have no legal impact and that can't be enforced, to prevent people from knowing the open sesame words to say, no, if and let's say mom doesn't show up with the kids for a week. And like, I had a dad where the mom took off to Florida for 6 months and concealed the children. He spent $150,000 to get the children back. No consequence to her whatsoever. That was kidnapping. And the court, right? Like, we don't want the court to have more power by combining a possible upset of temporary emotions during an emotional time with like physical violence. It takes away the harm. Or I hear people say, oh, words are just as hurtful as fists. I'm like, sounds like you've never been punched close fists. Like, but
Yeah.
now it's like a good time for us to test that theory.
Here, I'm going to insult you and punch you a few times. Let's see. Yeah, look, you raise a good point though about not wanting to give the courts more power. So yeah, there is a movement afoot to do that always, and one of them is, there's an outfit in California called the California Protective Parents Association, And hey, who could be against protective parent protecting the child against abuse? That sounds really, really good. But what they're really agitating for is they want to make it easier to terminate parental rights of the other parent. And I believe that that's the last thing that we should want. It should be extremely difficult to terminate somebody's parental rights. I don't, you know, there are cases where it should happen. There are truly abusive people, and that's, look, it's difficult, right? These kinds of problems are difficult, but just, you know, allowing the government to solve them is just a terrible idea. So if I could put one message out there, people, grow up. If you have a dispute and you have a problem, you can solve this. You can break up and separate and from your partner, even if you have kids, even if you have property and money. You can do this if you're an adult, and I've seen it. I've seen amicable divorces where, you know, mom, you know, has a new boyfriend and dad has a new girlfriend, and they continue to live close together, and the kids kind of go back and forth, and the kids will absolutely take their attitude from the grown-ups. They will. And if the attitude is, you know, we still both love you, we're in other relationships now, or we're not together, but we still love you, and you still have a mommy and a dad. I've seen this work, and it's not a problem at all, you know. But what happens is that sometimes people get so angry and so hurt that they just want to destroy the other person, and that's understandable. But then when you have this court system that can be weaponized, that can take these venomous emotions that are out there, and instead of diffusing them like it should be, and saying, hey, we're all adults here, let's be reasonable, let's split up the money, let's figure out a parenting plan, we can do this, right? Instead of that, it goes the opposite direction, which is his attorney says, she's the one, she's trying to screw you over, she's the bad one, she did this, and you can do so much. And then her attorney says, no, he's the evil one, he's the bad guy. And they just keep you at each other's throats forever and ever, until, you know, it's like being chained to the back of a pickup truck and drugged down a dirt road. It's really only over when somebody runs out of gas, you know. And we can do better. And you can mediate your dispute. You can settle your dispute. If you're thinking about going to family court, just don't do it. And if you're in family court, get out. Figure out what the other side wants. Have them understand what you want. Meet in the middle. You absolutely can do this. You can get with a mediator if you want. I mean, I've mediated some cases successfully, cases that looked like they were hopeless, but you know, you can do this, and only free people are going to solve this problem by taking it away from the government court system as much as we're able to do. So I mean, there's a lot to it, and I'd love to hear from anybody that might be hearing this podcast. And again, thanks to Marianne for having me on. My name is Alex, and you can always find me at pmjmp.org. Become a member. I'm a regular blogger. I'm sending stuff out all the time. So join my org, and look for my book, hopefully coming out next year, Railroading, Stonewalling, and Gaslighting, which is chaos, crime, and corruption in the California kangaroo courts.
Excellent.
And that
I
would
want to have you back on.
Alex is capable of mediating a case. So, you know, if you're at some point, and no one is going to be able to have, you know, the love of what's right and fair. Like, Alex is just this rare person that the love of what's right and good and collectively beneficial is within him. And like, there is an option, but I mean, right. I didn't read Alex until my 7th year of hell. So knowing where to go, you know, it's not Yelp. and it's not looking for a review that says they're the most aggressive or something like that. That means they just ran up billing.
Yeah.
And I also say, like, almost every year, most people get divorced with the IRS. You go sit down with your CPA and they tell you how much you're going to give, and you're getting fucked by them and getting nothing in return. And it's a lot like a divorce. But every year you line up and you pay a check even for that service, and they get it done with tax code that's ever changing and really complicated. At some point, we have to move our life, our time. The most precious asset you have is time. Ask somebody who's in final stage of terminal illness. They will tell you it was time. No amount of money could save Steve Jobs. So that being said, there's also a movie called Boyhood, which I loved. I sent a copy to my ex. It didn't really work out well for me, but doesn't mean it can't work out well for you. And what it showed was that they time lapsed people over 12 years, and they showed how high, a very fighting, let's say bilateral warring parents, who dragged their children through 12 years of hell. In the end, they were like all hanging out. And this little boy drives away in his beaten up pickup truck, into his own new life, because those two parents squandered his childhood. And the sand of time hourglass for when he turned 18 was, he had it right all along, and it took until that point for them to set him free, and he really had to set himself free. So it's a 90-minute movie, but it's such a neat thing, because it shows you how 12 years of a child's life can just be pissed away with conflict, and in the end we could have wrinkled time and never done that. So I really appreciate being here. I hope our stories of excessive litigation and the things that the courts have done to us, that the experience of that can be passed through into truly wisdom, that another party, or even somebody even if you've been to hell, but maybe somebody hasn't, help them not do this. Tell people your story. Declare that the courts are completely corrupt and that you can do better on your own, because no one said that to me before I went in. I think so many people are ashamed and they feel like they've failed, but social media has allowed us to connect in big numbers. And as we aggregated that power, we no longer felt like we were alone. Find, groups. And I also, depending on where you are in your journey, you might feel like you need a gender group, and that's okay. And maybe for the hurt you're experiencing, but try to find your way into a co-ed group, because this is not a gendered issue, and you could really make your belief system even impact your children, where you begin to look at a gender as toxic. And I mean, my kids definitely saw some things that they never should have, and it made them have certain opinions. But healthy relationships with both genders will help you be get through this process better. And this is not a gendered issue. This is not. And even as bad as your ex is, none of this would work if the courts weren't corrupt. Like, if the courts got it right, they would say, wow, this is a really bad person, and we have to make this right as quickly as possible to help the parties move forward. That's not what's happening. It's you are going to be with an abusive entity, and that is the court system. So please, if you have one abuser, don't think you're going to solve it by getting another abuser. Find a way out. Give up as much as you possibly can, because your peace, it can't be replaced, and the court will not make it better. Whatever's going on, the court's going to hold a megaphone. So if you're getting abused, the abuse is going to get louder. It's not going to be resolved. I have helped over 1,000 people, And I have never once seen the courts get it right. Never once.
Well, better luck next time.
Yeah.
Batting zero.
Yeah. That's why they call it their practice, right? Maybe they'll get it. Maybe they'll get it right next time. Yeah. Look, when I mediate, I have no power in that situation. I'm just there to lead a conversation, which is really what a good court system would actually just do, which is help you spot the issues, right? Because people wouldn't necessarily know what are all the legal issues or the things they actually need to work out. To spot those, I can give opinions on how the law might operate in a certain situation, but people need to understand that they are free to agree to whatever they want to agree to, basically, and that's even under the law, right? That you can settle on whatever terms work for you. So I can lead a conversation, and there have been some of these cases that seem completely impossible that then settled. I will say, however, that typically it's not as though one of these people suddenly became reasonable, because like I say, if you're litigating now, at least one of you is crazy and unreasonable. At least one, sometimes both, but at least one. And the crazy person does not suddenly become reasonable. What happens is they eventually realize that they might just lose everything, and they begin, like in one case, they were at each other's throats for a long time, and there was a nonsense restraining order and this and that and all this stuff, and the kids. But then he was able to get an attorney lien against the family house, because he was out of the house, he lost the kids, and he's like, screw it, I don't care, burn it down, I don't even care anymore. I just have to have a lawyer. And then once she figured out that his attorney was basically going to be able to foreclose on their house, then she became reasonable. That's what brought them to the bargaining table. We did mediate, we got through it, and we actually saved it. He got the restraining order lifted. They got a reasonable parenting plan. She was able to keep the house, and it was very much a win-win and a happy ending on what looked like it was heading for this typical just tragedy that we've seen in so many other cases. So there can be, stay open-minded to a solution if you're out there. I know it seems impossible. Believe me, I know. I've been through it. I'm still going through it, and but I've seen other cases where it worked out.
And something I just have to add, because of what Alex said, that you can make your own terms. I think something that is so liberating for both parents is this whole parents fearing a 2-2-5 schedule, or not getting 50-50 and being perceived as an inadequate parent. It's really ridiculous that parents should have to 50-50 divide a human being. And I think a lot of even joint families that aren't separated, somebody, there's a daddy's girl and maybe there's a mommy's boy, but then dad needs to do more with sports, or maybe mom is the head mom for the soccer team and dad's just really not into soccer, and you have a more fluid schedule. So to be a joint legal, joint physical, and have a fluid schedule where you say, you are just as much a parent as I am, but I think Sally will need me more when she starts puberty as a mom, and I think Bobby will need you a lot more when he wants to play golf. And the kids don't have to even feel like they must travel together, that they can, I was so Pollyannish, I tried to buy a duplex by the beach, and I thought he could live in one unit and I can live in the other, and that way, because I was paying for everything, I could have the nanny go between two locations and it would totally work out.
And it would if you wanted it to. Look, these are the kinds of things that all parents have to deal with all the time. This is just parenting 101, right? And it goes to this issue of best interest of the child. And this is one of the most deceptive terms from family law that just bothers me, because as a parent, you have ideas about what that means, best interest of the child. But you just think about all the choices that you have to make on a daily basis, right? You want your kid to eat healthy food, but you also want them to experience the joy of just pure sugar, right? So how much candy is too much? Well, okay, you want them to meet new people and have friends, but you don't want them hanging out with the wrong people. Well, so should they be allowed to go with this one particular kid? You want them to enjoy sports and to do things, but can an 8-year-old really do rock climbing? Or what about a 12-year-old? Or what? And it's just one thing after another. And the only way that parents can make these sorts of decisions is first by loving their children, because all of these come from love. And I got a news flash for you. Your family law judge does not love your kids, period. Therefore, it is impossible for a family court to determine what is in the best interest of the child. So yeah, adults, we can do this. We can break up and still have a parenting plan where, it might be the one kid spends more time with the other one or this one. And when you love your kids and you're committed to their peace and their happiness going forward, and you realize that mommy and daddy's war is not good for them, you can declare peace. And it starts by saying the war is over. The war's over, and it ultimately, it doesn't matter who was right and who was wrong. We've all got a job to do here, and we've got to figure out how to break up and how to continue to parent these children, and how to do it right in a peaceful and loving way. And adding a court system into that equation is only bad. It cannot possibly add anything good into that situation. So we all need to grow up, as far as I'm concerned, because there's a little child inside of all of us. There's a little boy inside of each man, and there's a little girl inside of each woman who still longs for mommy and daddy to take care of us and to feed us and to settle our fights and our sibling right and all of that stuff. And we kind of look to the court system to be that for us, and it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. We can do this, but we first have to realize that it's on us, that we just must not depend on this government court system, because they hate us. They're just extorting us, and we are cattle to them. We are just farm animals for them to raise and to shear and to slaughter when necessary. That's truly how we're viewed. And they don't care anything about our kids. They don't care about us. They don't care about our money, except for they want it. And all of that. So I know a lot of people think that I'm cynical, but I don't want to leave with a message of cynicism. I actually have great hope, and I want to just leave with a note of optimism for people. We can do this. I have seen it work, and I am optimistic because for the first time ever, millions and millions of people are waking up. They are. And what used to, yesterday's conspiracy theory is just today's fact. And people have to wake up before there's going to be change. I'm greatly optimistic that there's going to be change, because really all that has to happen is you and me, we need to change our mind. That's really the only thing that needs to change. And we need to let go of our belief that that some court system is here to take care of us and to make everything okay, because it's just not true. It's just not true. We have to stop believing in Santa Claus. And hey, our lives didn't end when we stopped believing in Santa Claus or the Tooth Fairy or whatever. That was just something, it was a story that had its purpose. but we let go of it when we grow up. And it's time for us to put our big girl panties and our big boy boxers on, and we've got a job to do. So let's come together. Let's reach out. Let's network. Let's come together, and let's do it.
Well, thank you both for coming on. I'd like to have you back on again, both of you, if you like. And
in a heartbeat, anytime, Marianne.
oh, excellent.
And you know what,
And you too,
Marianne,
Angel.
a beautiful, something I've always said to you, one of the many beautiful facets of you is your choice to remain kind despite what they did to you, right? Like the governor comment, that's so, it's such a great concentration of like what you are. We're in the face of somebody wanting to change you, wanting to make you angry, wanting to make you poisonous, that you said, no, I'm just going to stay the course. I'm a loving, kind, helpful person. I chose a career of nursing. Your life, it's a demonstration of goodness, and they couldn't take that away from you. They took away your children. They took away your freedom. They took away your faith in a legal system and probably in the country. That's some similar experience to mine, but that you stayed joyful, because if they take that, then they truly have robbed you of everything. When there is no hope, then truly all is lost.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping your chin up, and do also surround yourself with people that believe in something better. It's not all men are bad or all women are bad. Those people are not going to help you.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that they are where they probably are has a lot to do with the poison that's constantly, puking out of their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So, look out in the distance there, and also I know, because I've been in a situation. There was a point in my case where it was so dark, and it was the night is darkest before the dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And wherever you are in your journey, you are not alone. And and we hear you. We hear that it's not fair. We hear that there's a lot wrong, but a great deal of it is going to come from, exactly as Alex said, change your mind. Find a star to focus on, even if they've thrown you down the well.
Definitely. Well, I want to have you both back on. I'm so glad we had this conversation. Hopefully this will help a lot of people. So, hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms that in turn perpetuate parental alienation. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Alex Baker, JD, and Angel Law. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marianne.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.